We spend billions of dollars and honestly just a startling amount of global energy trying to build the perfect intelligence.
Oh, absolutely. The resources are staggering.
Right. We stack GPUs in these sub-zero server farms. We train models on literally the entire internet.
Mm-hmm.
And we're constantly looking for that singularity moment.
That moment where the machine finally becomes smarter than us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the research we have in front of us today for this deep dive argues that we might be looking at the wrong architecture entirely.
It's a really bold claim. The premise here is that the most sophisticated processing system on Earth isn't actually sitting in a data center in Northern Virginia.
No, it's growing right outside your window.
Right.
Welcome to today's deep dive, everybody. I'm your host, and joined as always by our resident systems expert. And today we are talking about trees.
Trees.
And look, before you roll your eyes and think we're about to, pivot into a gardening show or a plea to hug a redwood, stick with me here.
Please do, because it's not about botany at all.
No, not at all. The text we're breaking down is called The Arboreal Architecture of Integrated Leadership, and it's fundamentally about systems engineering.
Yeah, it claims that a tree is basically a living proof of concept for something called polyintelligence.
Polyintelligence. Let's define that right up front.
So polyintelligence is the key word for this whole discussion. It's not just saying nature is smart. It's a very specific definition of intelligence that integrates three distinct operating systems.
Okay, what are the three?
You have human intelligence, machine intelligence, and nature's intelligence.
Got it.
And the author's argument is that for the last 20 years or so, we've been completely obsessed with the first two.
Humans and machines.
Exactly. We've focused on human and machine intelligence, and we've basically ignored the architectural container that actually makes them sustainable.
Which is nature, the third leg of the stool.
Right. If you look at how we build companies or even how we manage our own personal productivity, it's usually just humans trying to keep up with machines.
It's a race.
It is a race. And the result is almost always burnout or some kind of systemic collapse.
Because we're not designed for that. The arboreal architecture suggests we need to stop trying to run against the machine and, start building systems that mimic the resilience of a forest.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of how you do that.
Right. The mission here is about building resilient organizations. The source material breaks this down into what it calls the 6 lessons of the tree.
Though reading through these, they honestly feel less like lessons and more like a list of glaring design flaws in how we currently work.
Oh, for sure. So let's jump into the first one, which is all about energy management.
This one is fundamental. If you just look at a tree, where does it get its energy?
From the sun. External sources.
Right. It captures external renewable energy and converts it. The source text makes a very specific, almost pointed statement here. It says the tree does not burn its own trunk to survive.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't consume its own structural integrity just to keep the lights on.
Which is, that's a devastating critique of modern work culture right there.
It really is.
Because burning the trunk is basically the standard operating procedure for most high-growth companies today.
Exactly. We run on adrenaline, we run on overtime.
You run on the internal depletion of the workforce.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. It's an internal combustion model of management. You extract energy from the people who are the trunk in this metaphor until they're totally hollowed out.
And then leadership wonders why the tree falls over in the first storm.
Right. A polyintelligent system, by contrast, is designed for what the text calls regenerative capacity.
Meaning the energy input is continuous and renewable.
Yes. It doesn't rely on destroying itself to produce output.
So in a practical sense, for you listening, this isn't just about work-life balance, which always kind of sounds like a HR perk.
It's not a perk, it's physics.
Yes. If your business model relies on literally consuming your staff's nervous systems to hit Q3 targets, you aren't building a tree, you're building a fire.
And fires burn really bright, but eventually they just turn to ash. Trees grow for hundreds of years.
It's all about the time frame of viability. Which leads us to the second lesson. The text calls this integrated functionality.
This part I found incredibly fascinating, mainly because in modern business we are obsessed with specialization.
Oh, entirely. You have the marketing department silo, the engineering silo, the HR silo.
But a tree doesn't work like that at all. A tree is the ultimate anti-silo architecture.
Explain that a bit more.
Think about what a tree is doing at any given second of the day. It is actively cooling the surrounding air. It's anchoring the soil to prevent erosion. It's hosting birds and insects.
It's cycling nutrients from the ground up, storing carbon.
Doing all of these things simultaneously.
And it doesn't fragment. It's not like the root system is fighting with the leaves for the annual budget.
Exactly. It's a fully unified organism. And this is where the concept of polyintelligence really challenges how we currently use AI.
Because right now, companies are mostly just layering AI on top of their existing broken, siloed structures.
Right. They're just adding a machine silo to the mix and hoping it makes everything faster.
But the goal of integrated functionality is totally different. It's designing systems where human judgment, machine speed, and ecological constraint function together seamlessly.
Like the anatomy of the tree itself. The roots, the trunk, and the canopy aren't separate entities competing with each other. They are phases of the exact same system.
So if we map that onto an organization,
Human judgment is the root system. It provides the grounding, the ethics. Machine intelligence is the canopy. It has this massive surface area, processing huge amounts of data, sunlight, carbon, incredibly fast.
but they have to be connected by a solid trunk.
Exactly, the operational process.
You mentioned roots, and that actually brings us right to the third lesson, which is specifically about roots and stability.
I think this is probably the most philosophical part of the text, but honestly, it's also the most urgent. It talks heavily about constraints.
Which we usually hate, especially in the tech space. We want frictionless everything.
We do. But the text argues that constraints are the only reason the tree can stand up. The roots physically bind the tree to the earth. They constrain its movement so that it has the stability to grow vertically.
I highlighted a line here that I love. The tree cannot float freely in abstraction.
It's a great line.
It needs to be grounded in something real. And the source actually lists what it calls the root system of civilization.
Right, these are specific human constraints we need to function properly.
Things like coherence, agency, belonging, fairness, meaning, and identity continuity.
Now think about what happens when you start removing those. If you design a workplace where a tracking algorithm dictates every micro-movement a warehouse worker makes.
You're stripping them of agency. You've just severed a root.
If you build an economic system where the generated wealth isn't shared fairly, violating fairness, you sever another root.
And you can only cut so many roots before the physics takes over.
The tree tips over. It doesn't matter how wide your canopy is or how much AI or capital you've accumulated. If you don't have that root system of meaning and agency, the entire structure collapses.
We see this all the time now. The Great Resignation, quiet quitting.
Those aren't just trendy media pieces. Those are literal root failures in the system.
It's people realizing, I have no stability here, and actively detaching from the soil.
Precisely. Stability is not a passive state. It is an active grip on the things that actually matter.
Okay, so looking up from the roots, let's talk about the environment the tree actually lives in. The fourth lesson is atmospheric regulation.
This completely flipped my view on what leadership is supposed to be.
Same. Usually we think of a leader as the person pushing the gas pedal, creating urgency.
But a tree does the exact opposite. It regulates. If you walk into a forest on a really hot summer day, you instantly feel that drop in temperature.
Right.
That's not an accident. The tree is actively modulating its environment through transpiration and shade. It is literally creating a microclimate where life is possible.
The text calls this reducing moral friction. I love that term so much. So in this model, a leader's job isn't to create urgency, it's to absorb heat.
Think about the heat in a modern organization. You've got extreme volatility, data overload, constant anxiety, the relentless 24-hour news cycle.
It's a hot, hostile atmosphere.
Very hostile. And if you, as a leader, are just amplifying that heat, if you're forwarding panicked emails at 2 in the morning, you are scorching the earth.
You're making it worse.
Exactly. A polyintelligent leader acts like the canopy. They filter the scorching sunlight and turn it into something useful. They create a cool, shaded space underneath where the team can actually focus and think clearly.
So you're not the taskmaster, you are the thermostat. You're keeping the temperature in the optimal range for biological intelligence, meaning us humans to function.
Because human intelligence rapidly degrades in high heat. We make terrible decisions when we're panicked. We completely stop being creative. So atmospheric regulation isn't just nice to have, it's a massive competitive advantage.
Which segues perfectly into the mechanics of how the tree handles that environment. Lesson 5 is transforming externality.
This is basically the alchemy of the tree.
Yeah, it takes carbon dioxide, which is a waste product, a literal poison to us, and it turns it into wood and oxygen.
It takes a negative externality and converts it into stored strength.
So the obvious question here is, What is the carbon of the digital age?
Data noise, complexity, uncertainty, these are the things that constantly choke us. We are absolutely drowning in data carbon.
And this is where the machine intelligence part of the triad really shines, right?
Yeah.
Because humans are notoriously terrible at filtering massive amounts of noise.
We get completely overwhelmed,
Right.
which makes this the ideal role for AI in a polyintelligent system. You don't use AI to replace human judgment, you use it to absorb the carbon.
The raw, unstructured data.
Yes, the noise, the volatility, the machine processes that toxicity and synthesizes it into clear signals.
The oxygen.
The oxygen that the human can then breathe and actually use to make high-level decisions.
I really like that distinction. It's not AI does the work. It's AI cleans the air.
Right. It processes the hazard so the human can do the thinking. It converts the threat of overwhelm into the asset of clarity. That is a pure regenerative loop.
Which brings us to the final lesson of the tree. Lesson 6 is about scaling.
Scaling in Silicon Valley usually means blitz scaling. You grow as fast as physically possible, usually by burning massive amounts of cash and breaking things along the way.
But the tree has a totally different growth model.
The tree scales by propagation, not just extraction. Modern scaling is almost entirely extractive. We take more user data, more attention, more natural resources. We're effectively digging a giant hole just to build a mountain.
But the tree scales by self-replication. It drops seeds, it creates more trees.
It creates a forest. It doesn't just try to become one infinite, miles-high super tree.
Which would obviously just collapse under its own weight.
Biology knows that limits exist for a structural reason. So instead of becoming a monster, it replicates its successful architecture.
That's the difference between a franchise model that just dilutes quality until it fails and true ecosystem growth, where every new node actually adds stability to the whole network.
And that deeply implies that growth shouldn't degrade the soil. If your growth strategy requires destroying the market or burning out your entire workforce, you aren't scaling like a tree.
You're scaling like a virus.
That is the harsh truth of it. A virus kills its host. A forest builds the soil that supports it.
Okay, let's zoom out from the individual tree to the bigger picture, because the source material shifts gears here to talk about the wisdom of the forest.
This is where we get into network-centric intelligence. We tend to think we invented the network with the internet.
Right?
But nature beat us to it by about 400 million years. We often call it the Wood Wide Web.
Which I always thought was just a cute pun, but the actual mechanics of it are incredibly serious.
It's vastly more sophisticated than most people realize. You have these fungal networks, the mycelium, connecting the root systems of different trees and even across different species entirely.
And they exchange resources, right?
Carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, water. But much more importantly, they exchange information.
How does that work?
If a tree is being attacked by pests, it actually sends chemical signals down through the root network to warn its neighbors, and then those neighbors raise their own chemical defenses before the pests even reach them.
That is true. Distributed intelligence. It's not a central server telling everyone what to do.
No, it's peer-to-peer. And notice the philosophical difference here. Our digital networks are usually built for surveillance or transaction. The forest network is built for mutual aid and resilience.
It's collaborative.
Entirely. If a mother tree is dying, it will actually dump its remaining resources into the network to support the younger saplings around it. It is an investment in the future of the system.
It fundamentally challenges that whole survival of the fittest narrative we've been sold, the one that's usually interpreted as just everyone for themselves.
Exactly. In a forest, the fittest is simply the one most connected to the network. Solitary trees die young. That's just what the data shows.
Okay, so we've looked at the tree, we've looked at the forest. Now I really want to land on the core concept of this entire paper, which is the 3 pillars of polyintelligence.
We defined them earlier: human, machine, and nature. But the source text goes deep into why we absolutely need all 3 functioning together. It calls it a necessary synthesis.
It's essentially a checks and balances system. Let's break down exactly what each pillar brings to the table.
Sure. So human intelligence brings the narrative. It brings ethics, complex judgment, and the quest for meaning. We provide the why.
And machine intelligence.
Machine intelligence brings speed, simulation, extreme precision, and perfect memory. It handles the how and the what, and it does it at a scale we simply can't touch.
But if you only have those 2 humans paired with super fast machines, you just get what we have right now. High speed, high anxiety, and high burnout.
Right. You get massive acceleration without any direction or braking mechanism. That is exactly where nature's intelligence comes in.
The third pillar.
It brings constraint, regeneration, and systemic balance. It provides the operating limits.
The paper uses a term in this section that really genuinely scared me. Degradation cascades.
Yeah,
This is what happens when you ignore that third pillar entirely.
it is scary, mostly because it's happening all around us right now. A degradation cascade occurred when the acceleration of the machine outstrips the regenerative tempo of the human or the environment.
Can you give us a concrete example of how that plays out?
Think about algorithmic trading, or even just high-frequency social media feeds. The machine is operating literally at the speed of light, but the human nervous system operates at the speed of biology.
Chemical signals moving slowly across synapses.
Exactly. So when you force the biological human to interface directly with the light-speed machine without any buffer, the human system physically degrades.
The tension spans shatter.
Anxiety spikes, sleep cycles are completely disrupted.
It's like a gear spinning so fast it just strips the teeth right off the other cog.
That's a perfect visual. And then the whole system cascades. Because burnt-out people make bad decisions. Bad decisions lead to highly volatile markets or incredibly toxic company cultures. The soil erodes.
So incorporating the nature pillar isn't just about, being green or eco-friendly. It's about introducing architectural friction or necessary constraints that keep the system from literally tearing itself apart.
Yes. It is having the wisdom to say, just because we can go faster doesn't mean we should. Systemic resilience requires recovery time. A tree goes dormant in the winter for a reason to survive.
If it tried to bloom all year round, it would exhaust its resources and die.
But we are trying to bloom all year round.
That was the real aha moment for me reading this. We view downtime as a bug in the system. Nature views it as a vital feature.
It's a non-negotiable requirement for structural integrity.
So if you're listening to this and you're a manager, or honestly just someone trying to organize your own life, what does this architectural alignment actually look like on a random Tuesday morning?
It starts by auditing your energy sources. Are you running on renewable inputs, things like curiosity, actual rest, genuine connection, or are you burning your own trunk to get through the week?
Right.
Then you have to look at your roots. Do you feel a sense of agency and fairness in your work? Because if not, no amount of productivity apps or machine intelligence will save you from eventually tipping over.
And it means recognizing that the ultimate goal isn't domination over your workload or your market.
Yeah.
The source text has this really profound line. The future of advanced systems is not domination over nature, but architectural alignment with it.
We've spent the last 200 years acting like we are entirely separate from nature or somehow above it. We really thought technology was our escape pod from biology.
But Polyintelligence argues that technology is only sustainable if it anchors us back into biology.
It's deeply humbling. We look at a tree and we just see lumber. But that tree is running a complex, solar-powered, network-centric, regenerative operation that supports thousands of other species while actively cleaning the atmosphere.
And we call that primitive.
It's just the height of arrogance. The tree has passed the ultimate test of time. It has millions of years of R&D behind it. We've been online for about 30 years, and we're already completely stressed out. Maybe we should start taking notes.
We've been online for 30 years and we're already stressed out. I love that. But it really does highlight the massive gap in wisdom there.
It does, and yet that's actually the most hopeful part of this entire research for me. We don't have to invent some completely new way to survive from scratch. The blueprint is already there.
We just have to be humble enough to actually read it.
Exactly.
Well, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Building on a definition of innovation from the source material that feels incredibly fresh. The text says, innovation is not actually about building new things. It is about designing systems so they behave more like healthy living systems.
That is the paradigm shift right there. Stop building machines and start cultivating life.
And to take that one step further for you to explore on your own. If a company is a tree and your industry is the forest, what is the role of the seasons? We talk a lot about growth, but living systems require cyclical dormancy. They require a winter to shed dead leaves and redirect energy inward. What would an organizational winter look like for you? And how much stronger would your roots be if you actually allowed it to happen? That's a powerful question. A huge thank you to the author of The Arboreal Architecture of Integrated Leadership for giving us so much to think about. And thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go find some roots, let yourself experience a little winter, and we'll see you next time.